My name is Andy Schmuckler. My video series is called A Better Human Story. I make videos here to try to show an integrative vision of the forces at work in the human world. There are a lot of things integrated into this picture, which I spent my life developing, and I'm devoted to trying to get out there because I actually think it might be beneficial. So that's where I'm coming from. When these videos are a part of that task, and one of the things that characterizes what I'm doing in these videos is I do a minimal amount of planning when I start talking about something. I know what I'm going to be talking about. I know some things that I'm going to want to say, but I haven't worked out how I'm going to do it. And in some ways, I can look at that and I can say, well, why am I doing it conversationally? And part of it, I think, is in fact that I don't want to work as hard as it would be to lay out, essentially a lecture. I mean, I've done that sort of thing. And the last time I gave a half-hour lecture, I put a lot of time into thinking through exactly how I was going to do it. I'd written some versions. It's a lot of work, and I don't want to. Every week I put out, at the minimum, I put out one op-ed piece into the conservative area of Virginia, where I live, and probably other things on Daily Kos, which is a very liberal site. And those things are sort of attempts to ply my craft, which since my mid-teens has been learning how to write and how to present things in a systematic way. And so that book there, which is sort of the foundational idea of my whole Better Human Story, The Parable of the Tribes, came out in 1984. I worked for 14 years to articulate that way. And I like the idea of not having to work that hard before coming out to share something that I feel is worth sharing. Actually, that would be sufficient maybe to explain it. I mean, I've got an op-ed piece on the way. I just don't have enough energy to say what I want to say about other subjects and have to lay it out systematically in the way that was trained to do from my family on, through my doctorate and all that. And that's what I know how to do. There's something else about the improvisation that I think is what I'm hoping is true. There's a systematic way of laying things out. But if it's all one organic whole of an integrative vision, then a lot of things are connected with a lot of other things. There are a great many connections in any given systematic way of laying them out in terms of like that. It lays it out, but it can only illustrate well the connections that are involved in that systematic way. But when you're doing something improvisational, and this is something I recognize has been in what I've done in my videos so far here, that there are connections that get made, that the lack of that changing maybe in a surprising way the direction of what you're saying, going from the evolutionary perspective to the presidential election or something like that. Skipping some of the scaffolding of all the things that make for that connection, but it suggests like a lightning strike in the night sky. You get to see something about the lay of the land. You get to see that the integrated nature of our relationship, all the interconnections, the way, not that everything is connected with everything else, but so much is connected with so much else so meaningfully, it really should blow our minds. So the more to convey an integrative vision, I think that there's this is my version of the improvisational. By the way, I'll go back to talking more about how that fits improvisation in general. The creative spark of changing directions, maybe not even completing the first point, but you can see where it was heading. And then suddenly going zigzagging like a lightning bolt down to a whole different level of reality. So that you move from democracy versus fascism to stepping across the threshold where a creature has extricated itself from the niche in which it evolved biologically by inventing its own way of life, all the way up to issues of how did the Republican base become so captured by this force of brokenness that they might give us a fascist regime in spite of or because of all the evidence. From level to level, things get zapped, and I like to think that the way that I'm moving from subject to subject, I'm not in control of it, but I like to think that there's something in here, some kind of gyroscope that makes the connections that are helpful for achieving the wider purpose. And I think that we can, the question then is, that I've got is whether the improvisational nature is working with the audience so that there's if anybody's following the series and seeing all the various interconnections that get made along the way, if there is some kind of picture that's emerging that makes the improvisational a useful way of bringing to life the incredible integrated nature of the human, the picture of human civilization. Not that everything's integrated into my integrated, but enough so that there's enough that it could really make a difference if we understood what this integrated picture shows. So I believe. When I think about improv, like on a stage, the actors are going out there with a vague notion of what they're going to do. Vague, but they probably they've agreed upon what the starting place is, I'm imagining. Or maybe even just one person knows what that's their job, just to throw things out and let people run with it. But the thing is, what's going to happen is going to be spontaneous. It's not going to be laid out with the precision of an Ibsen play or a George Bernard Shaw kind of play. It's not going to be constructed so that you can see the whole way that this playwright has orchestrated the meaningful picture he wants to convey. No, it's going to take surprising turns. Nobody's thought through where all this is going to go. And there must be a value in that. I mean, otherwise, why would people go to see improv and not just reject improv for what Ibsen and Shaw are able to do on the stage? And I'm guessing that similarly, there's a faith being placed in some creative core at the center, whether it's the actor's core at the center on the stage or the thinker's core at the center, that can be relied on to be able to make the kinds of connections that are surprising and worthwhile, that give us something as the audience. And also jazz, which is, I think, the quintessential art form of improvisation. I'm not deeply steeped in jazz, not entirely ignorant, but I've always been into Dixieland just for as one form of jazz. I can they say Dixieland jazz. I think I can use that. And I like Brubeck, but you know. But in any event, my understanding of the world of jazz as it has been, uh, I don't know, emerging maybe in the late 19th century in New Orleans and other cities developing their own kind of jazz, that improvisation was at the center of it as an art form. And when I listen to Brubeck, I have a feeling that maybe they developed it by improv, but it doesn't sound like improv to me. But I gather uh, that at the essence of jazz has been improvisation. And again, I assume that it represents a faith in something that's in the creative heart of the performer that will make improvisations off of what has happened so far that are meaningful, that have value, that are expressive for them, and that are experienced by the audience as enriching. And I think I'm not going to go any further into this. This one I don't want to think through more, but I think that the fact that improv can have such value, whether I can claim that for my performance or not, but clearly in some realms people find value in improv. That means there is something within people that is whole uh, and kind of beautiful, uh, that we can have faith in some aspect of ourselves to do good things. Now, these are performances of sorts, but I think that the picture probably can be broadened even further. That we are actually better creatures than we have thought ourselves to be. That the same general part of our core that improv can draw upon to create something of value, that we also have something at our core that would make us act better in the world than much of what we can see around us. And my life's work has been trying to show the consequences of our having unleashed a force that has robbed us so far of the ability to choose what kind of world we'd have around us. And so I say, as something I claim that I can prove, is that the ugliness we see in human history is not a clear picture of what we are by nature. I struggle myself these days to see so much of humanity doing such ugly things, both politically here in America and around the world, looking at the Gaza and Israel and Hezbollah thing, and what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. It causes me a lot of distress. But I can see that even if all that ugliness is out there, even if I'm surrounded in the Trumpy part of Virginia, good people who are supporting destructive force, is a way in which, if you want to get an integrated picture, you got to sense the whole. You got to recognize how much this, say, this presidential election relates to a dynamic that you can see in operating in the human world, in which there are two coherent forces battling over human destiny. And you can see these forces in rational, naturalistic terms as being generated inevitably by the system that emerges anytime any creature on any planet embarks on the path of civilization, leaving the order that biological evolution that created it had created, in which it had been embedded. And now it has extricated itself and plunges into a disorder. Looking at all those forces and how you can see them moving through the human system. This is my human story. I claim that I can show that there is this drama of these two forces battling, and the inevitable destructive force that civilization would entail for any creature on any planet generates something that you can trace moving through the human system that explains, without condemning human nature, why the world's got so much ugliness in it, and also clarifies the nature of the battle that we have to fight and win if human civilization is going to survive for the long haul. So this is the belief that drives me. It's the improvisation, it is hoped, can provide us alternative way of seeing the whole in a different fashion than the systemic way that I lay it out in the parable of the tribes. I lay it out in what we're up against. I lay it out in the book whose subtitle is Healing the Wounds That Drive Us to War, which is a way of looking at how brokenness moves through the human system. So anyway, that's what I'm hoping that I can do. And if you're interested in seeing that integrative picture, then this improvisation, if I'm successful with it, it might help provide a view into the nature of our predicament as the creatures on this planet that that stepped onto the path of civilization, being for the first time in the history of life's evolution for 3.5 billion years, to leave the order that biological evolution created, and the disorder and the destructive force, the inevitable disorder that would entail to leave that order, and the inevitable destructive force that arises from it. And so you can see that the forces of life that come out of biological evolution, having to contend with a destructive force, are contending with each other at the center of the human drama to see which will control the direction things go. The brokenness begets brokenness, or the wholeness begets wholeness. And then to connect that with moments like this in American history, where I've been watching for a little over 30 years how this battle has been gathering in the American power system, where a force of fascism has been rising since Limbaugh and Gingrich, and has reached a kind of a incredible culmination in a leader like Donald Trump. That this drama can be understood as a focal point in a much wider drama that the human species has been engaged in for millennia, ultimately, because this problem, this force arose even before there were cities. It arose as soon as the a new kind of life form, the civilizing societies that had broken out of the naturally evolved pattern of natural selection. Even with agriculture, well, before agriculture, with horticulture and herding and various other things which lead to different kinds of societies than ever could have existed when we were still living like primate bands, still within the natural order. If you'd like to see how that gets laid out systematically, please go to my website, abetterhumanstory.org. This has been my life's work. And my reason for being here is just to see if I can get people to check it out. I don't feel confidence that I can get people to check it out because I've got some years of experience. But I don't feel uncomfortable about promising. You will find there what I say that you will find. And let me just say that I take promises super seriously. I'm aware of many of my shortcomings, but one thing I can say about myself is I've never broken a promise. And so in that spirit, I promise you, if you go to abetterhumanstory.org and look at what's laid out there, you'll find that I've spoken truly about there being a way of understanding what's happened to our species that could have a benefit that's valid, at least holds a lot of water, and the understanding of which might have a beneficial impact on how we deal with the challenges we face. Because what's at stake right now, it seems clear to me, is whether over the next not so many generations, we're either going to get our act together in order to survive as a civilized species on this planet for the long haul, or if we can't do that soon enough, whether we'll destroy ourselves. So with that at stake, I feel compelled to offer this thing and make that promise so that anybody who would want to know if it were true will go and check it out rather than just assuming, oh, this guy's kind of grandiose. I won't deny there's elements of that in me, but they're not in control here. That's not where I'm coming from. So this was an improvisation that began with the issue of improvisation and ended up with a way of describing essentially what I'm trying to do and having me use this medium in trying to do it. I hope that works to deliver something of value. Thank you. I'll be back talking about why we've decided to move into a retirement community, even though we're doing really well out here in a rugged place that we really love living in. It's been something of a journey, and I know there are a lot of people dealing with issues of aging, and so I'm hoping that that our struggle in discussing the issues would be of value to people dealing with their own aging or with their parents' aging. Back soon, probably. Thank you. Bye-bye.